Hey, good morning, folks. Welcome to the Coffee Break Podcast, where our mission here is to share business practices, ideas, and strategies while we enjoy our morning cup of coffee. I'm Chad Lingefeld here from Loc-Doc Security. Today's guest is Johnny Freeman from the Johnny Fly Company, and we're excited to have an awesome conversation with him today. But first, Chris, roll that intro.
We got so much to say. We got a podcast to make. We're sipping on lattes, and it's time for a coffee break. It's time for a coffee break. Oh yeah.
All right, welcome back, folks. Hey, thanks for being here today, Johnny. Thank you for being here, taking time out of your schedule.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited. So, just a quick background, and before we're going to jump into some icebreaker questions here in just a second. But real quick, I've always been fascinated with your brand, and we were just sitting here chatting about it. I have been thinking about it for a long time, trying to figure out how I originally became aware of Johnny Fly, and I can't really pinpoint it down. But I know it's through Instagram and everything else. So we'll get into more of that here in a little while, and really excited about that. So one of the things that we do here, we've been testing this out on season 2 of the podcast, is 5 quick rapid fire questions just to get to know you a little more. So 5 quick questions. Last song you listened to?
Phaser's Just Done by Taking Back Sunday.
All right. Second one is what book are you reading now, or what audio book, podcast, any of those things?
I'm actually in between a lot of things right now. I don't have it, not on one particular.
Okay, cool. What is and this is a good one for you. What is the fastest speed you've ever driven in a car?
I've hit 200. Yeah.
That's pretty exciting. How many cups of coffee do you drink in a day?
I'd say 4 to 5.
4 or 5? That's right on. And then last one is, are you a morning person or a night owl?
I love both, actually, but I do stay up late, but
right.
But I love mornings. So.
Yeah. Cool. Well, there's a little bit of rapid fire. So, again, by introduction, tell us a little bit about who you are and kind of how we arrived at this point.
Yeah, like you said, my name's Johnny. I live here in Charlotte. I developed a brand called Johnny Fly, which we focus on sustainability and just trying to do something different when it comes to the fashion world and accessories and things like that.
So cool. So you've been around and done a lot of things. So we were talking about it earlier. Your family has a business here in Charlotte, car stereo business, and you were a kid that just kind of grew up around that business for a long period of time, and then you got into racing.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about that.
I grew up in the business world really with my dad, mom and dad, building a business from one store to their 7 stores now. Which is really unique, kind of growing up with the dinner time conversation being cash flow and employees and acquisition and different things that I never would have I guess have just become commonplace in my life.
Sure.
But we always had a passion obviously for cars because they were into car stereos. My dad was a really sharp marketing guy for his time. He was always all over radio, all over TV. So it was really interesting to always watch that because everyone always, word of mouth was huge. Things evolved over, I guess, to the racing side. I raced cars as a hobby growing up. I got an opportunity to launch in the developmental series when I was in my teens, into my early 20s. So ran a lot of the NASCAR developmental stuff, did some open wheel stuff overseas. But ultimately with the downturn of the economy, the timing that it was, a lot of sponsor money dried up over there.
Sure.
And not only that, the family business was struggling.
Gotcha.
So I ended up, or not struggling, but the family business was
being affected.
It was being affected naturally, like anything else. So
economic downturn. Sometimes car stereos are not the most important thing.
Certainly,
and accessories, but yeah.
So I jumped back into the mix over there. And I largely tried to take the company up into the to the year. We were not great in web. We were not great we had no social presence, even though social still wasn't a thing then. But
sure,
that was kind of the turn. but the quick backstory of that end.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. So it is interesting, and I don't want to talk too much about this but I think it's a foundation building block. What you just said, Freeman's Car Stereo in this Charlotte market is created a brand. Like if you wanted quality stereo equipment for your automobile or any of that, integrated video system screens and all that stuff, that's where you went. It was the retail store. You could go in and talk shop with those folks and learn and understand, and then get that product installed. And they, I guess, credit to your dad for that, creating and crafting that really solid brand associated with
Certainly.
that. So let's bring that up and get into kind of where you are now. But let's set the stage. Late 2011, because I know the company Johnny Fly was launched in 2012. So my thought is, and I like to try to retrace steps back and go, okay, how did we get to that point? Because typically speaking, when you get to launch, there's a lot of other things that were involved prior to that a lot of people just just assume that a business just launched up overnight. So what was happening in 2011 to bring you to that point?
I was really involved in the family business. Like I said, working on social media, bringing us into that realm. And I ran into a point, and we're talking, early 20 or late, 2011 in general. I mean, this is pre-Instagram.
Sure.
Amazon's still not a thing. Social media marketing was not at all on many people's radar, and it was something that I was really passionate about because there was no way to spend money. There was no marketing on there. Like, you made a person page with a business picture. Yep. And I was doing really well with Freeman's, but I kind of hit a bubble because I was just marketing to Charlotte, and I was like, there is an opportunity here. Yeah. There is something bigger. There's a way to reach a lot of people with zero spend. And just the right timing and influence.
So this was this was really kind of playing off the early days when the algorithm was not as much. It was more of a chronological timeline.
Yes, and the algorithm changed every Tuesday. So I used to wake up every Tuesday morning, read the blogs, and read everybody's stuff to see, okay, what colors need to be in photos, what type of photos needed to be, what sizes, whatever made you, because it was still chronological, but there were things that would help move you around. Sure. Especially after the chronological change. Then I really played that game. Yeah. Before now it's all spend, but it's a different time for sure.
No, but that's really neat because it's something that helps to it was a game changer at that point, is understanding how to share your message. We talk about that a lot around here and even on the podcast, but sharing your story and the social presence is part of that. If you can't there's so much noise out there right now, and even back then, but there's so much noise that you have to find a way to kind of break through that to be able to share your story. So you're learning about the algorithms. You said you've created a little bit of a bubble there with the family business. So 2011, you're saying, hey, there's much more to this. What else can I do?
Yeah, and I'd always been interested in fashion. Like, everybody says, when did you start your business? I started my hobby in 2012 officially. But Johnny Fly was an outlet for me to be creative, to step out of the box and do something different. I didn't really know where I wanted to go. I knew I just wanted to be able to reach people with the passion that I had. And so it started with a handful of different fashion items. So I guess end of 2011, we came up with the idea. I was like, hey, let's make a handful of T-shirts, just to kind of get this thing off the ground and then see where it can go. And then we started. Obviously, I had to go through the trademarking process, and which that was the right away was like, okay, how the heck we're gonna figure this name out? Yeah. And what are we gonna call this thing? And honestly, I didn't want my focus to seem split because I was very, very passionate in my family business. Yeah. So I was honestly trying to name it something outside that I was not going to be involved in. Gotcha. Or known for, or that I was even part of this. Sure. At that point in time. Even my parents didn't know right away. Like, it was one of these things. It was just a hobby. Yeah. Something I did at night. And
so where did the name come from?
Years and years ago, TV announcer coined me on HikVision a long time ago, Johnny Fly. Gotcha. And I think it was Ralph Shaheen, if I remember correctly. But and then it just stuck, and a lot of friends called me that. It became an alter ego in some ways. Gotcha. But anytime I got artsy and got weird, that was always everybody. It was my Johnny Fly stuff. So
that's pretty cool. So you went through all that. You're still just kind of playing around with it. So let's launch some T-shirts, kind of figure this thing out, and then. You mentioned it already. A big factor of the Johnny Fly brand is the sustainability factor, eco-friendly, right?
Certainly.
So is that really you had an interest in fashion and that kind of thing? and then you're like, well, where did the sustainability and eco-friendly stuff come in?
You know, the sustainability side of things was something in my personal life that I had spent a lot of time with, and I guess it was part of, you know, my day to day, but it was a little harder to kind of move into the fashion side. I think initially we actually were trying to use like bamboo cotton t-shirts. We were trying to do all these things, which became more and more complicated.
Yeah.
As we learned, you know, going through it. Eyewear rolled in shortly after and took over what Johnny Fly is. You know, and actually before that, wooden phone cases were just before eyewear, and wooden phone cases were really what put us on the map as something real weird and different.
Yeah.
Which you see a lot of it nowadays, but I'd say we were one of the originators.
So the original was some T-shirts just to kind of launch the fashion brand. So the eyewear wasn't really.
It wasn't anywhere in eyewear was always a passion of mine. And it was one of those things that I said, if I did it, and if I didn't do it right, then I'm going to be, you know, I'm going to still be wishing I was wearing somebody else's stuff because I'm not keeping doing it. Because it was all like, if I wanted it, I made it, and hopefully everybody else liked it.
Got it.
Because I was making things that I would want or need.
There you go.
That I didn't see in the marketplace.
Sure.
And the eyewear, you know, the phone cases became a really kind of cool niche thing. We were lasering them all in-house. Like I bought a laser machine with everything I had and said, hey, let's go for this. And that led to, hey, I can make a wooden arm for the sunglass. So we found somebody to mold us a front piece, bought some door hinge style crappy hinges and screwed them all together in our dining room. So we're talking late 2011 here, where we're sitting here with drills and you know a handful of us trying to assemble these sunglasses around the dining room.
What was the reaction that you were getting? Hey, here's a pair of sunglasses that I just made out of wood.
It was incredible. I thought we made like 60 pairs, which took us like 2 weeks. I mean, my roommate at the time, who just now graduated med school, and my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, you know, we were all just like,
yeah.
Well, they all kind of thought I was crazy, and they were like, you know, this is a lot of work for it. I just don't see why do they need to be wood, you know?
Yeah.
And I just loved woodwork and wood and everything else. So I was like, and sustainability, obviously. But I said, let's just try this. And we built 60 pairs. We were like, this will last, looking at the way everything else sold, because we were just small and doing it at night. So this will last 2 or 3 months. In a week, they were gone.
Wow.
In 2 months, we had built 600 pair in our dining room. And I started then pulling my hair out, like, I'm sitting in a guest room in Huntersville. How do we scale this properly, and how do we not lose this momentum?
Yeah.
Because now I was like, because there was a good year where I just sat there building better website. Nobody was buying anything from me, you know, because I had some T-shirts and some randomness, and if they did, I wasn't making any money for sure.
Yeah.
But you know, I was passionate about graphic design and everything else. So,
oh man, that's awesome. So you built this infrastructure, then you finally kind of hit this thing where these glasses are a hit, right? And now now it's like, okay, how do we make this continue?
Yeah. And how do we scale? You know, it's one of those things that, you know, I didn't come from manufacturing background. I don't know anything about this, or sourcing for that matter.
Sure.
And then how do we make a better product? It was cool, but to me, I guess I describe the early sunglasses as novelty, more than, I guess, function or you know, a true like
gotcha.
high dollar piece. Now the price point reflected that too. It was a completely different price point then too. And that led me to find better ways to manufacture better pieces. So
here's my question on that. When you make 60 pair of sunglasses and you've already got a website, is that where you launched these glasses that sold so fast? How did you get the word? Like, how did people know that those existed?
Social media. I mean, it was Facebook. I didn't have any money to spend marketing it or pushing it. We pushed things out on Facebook. This is like, you know, I guess Instagram had become, it was there, but it wasn't what it is. But really, we were all about really strong imagery. And the nature of Johnny Fly was we all just kind of learned to do things that we didn't know how to do. You know, I definitely will say I was not the best at a lot of these skills that I came up at, but I was good enough that I could afford to do it myself.
Sure.
So, you know, I shot a lot of the photography. I did all the graphic design. My wife learned graphic design, which is now her full-time job.
Awesome.
But she learned to do that on the side and helping me put websites together. But I really think we had very engaging imagery. Yep. That really showed the brand off well then, and through Facebook. And then there's a site called Fancy, which did really well for us then too. And it pushed the word out. And really it took off in Europe before it did here, which is a strange fact for Johnny Fly. But
really,
you know, our first year in eyewear, we were 75% European, or outside 75% outside the U.S.
And that's through social media, obviously, because you don't have any type of a presence over there.
Yep. Yeah. And today, back then I was always like, oh yeah, that's because we're in fashion and we're so far ahead. That's why Europeans are loving us more. Now in reality, when I look back as a business person, I say the dollar was in the dump. The euro was high. They were buying my stuff 30% off.
Yeah.
With exchange rate, that's really why we were, in a lot of ways, why it was just being pushed over there so quickly.
That's wild. So you launch this thing, you find something that really, really works. You hit something, and then it's okay. How do we scale? How do we build up? How do we keep this thing rolling?
Yep.
Because you don't want to let off the gas at that point. You've got traction. So what was going through your mind at that point, and what were the action steps? One of the things with this podcast we really try to figure out is some tactical, practical things that people can do. So
certainly,
you're maybe this is another business that's like, hey, I think we're on the cusp of something. Maybe we've got something going here. What do we need to do? And so in your experience, what did you do to kind of trigger that?
I guess there was a point in all that that I had to decide to go all in. You have to really decide to let this thing, blow up or blow up the other way.
Yeah.
And really give it everything. That was the really hard part. Was how do we decide? Okay, we're going to build a whole bunch of this, and even beyond, because with manufacturing and scaling, that was the hard part. I could never hit minimums to actually make better product. So when we got there, we just said, all right, let's put it all in one basket.
If I'm going to do it, I got to order a big order.
And I'm going to go full time, and I'm going to take my savings and leave my job, and I'm going to go full time and do this. Because doing it at night just wasn't doing it anymore. I was killing myself there for about 6 months because I was working until 2 or 3 in the morning, and I was getting back up at 7 and going out to my other job and coming back and doing that all night. So when that happened, that was the next move. Was we're going to go all in. We're going to find correct manufacturing, which is what led us to our acetate materials and our spring hinging that we still use an iteration of today. But we found, basically I just would stay up all night hunting ways other industries were using materials and items for things similar to eyewear.
Yeah.
And the hinging that's used in like optical frames and ophthalmics was spring hinge. And I'm like, why the heck do we not have these in these $300 fashion sunglasses that everybody's buying? And they still have like door hinge style hinges. Like what's going on? Through a lot of searching, I found a firm out of Japan who developed hinging for eyewear.
Gotcha.
And I said, can you make me like a stupid big one? Like, I just want a real large one to fit a fashion frame. And they were like, well, that's a waste of money. You're going to be spending way too much for, the margins of eyewear, and which there's, these big brands are making lots and lots of margin. Yeah. And I said, let's make this. We made a handful of those. And then also plastic was, not sustainable. Sustainability was something I really was passionate about. And we found the material cotton acetate, which we used for the front section. So it's not injection molded. It's made from one sheet. You cut them down individually. But it's incredibly durable, 30% lighter than plastic, and there's no petroleum involved.
So you're in this stage of like, all right, I want to do this eyewear thing is a hit.
Yep.
And now we want to do it the best we can make it. This is not like we want to shortcut this, and we want to do this the absolute best way possible and turn out a really good product. Here's a question for you on that, just as a side rail of that component. What you just told me there, to me as a consumer, is like, hey, these are really good quality, thought-driven products. How do you convey that in an Instagram photo? because that's part of that decision-making process. I can go buy, a comparable looking pair of eyewear somewhere else, maybe equal to or less than the cost, but you have done something completely different with the design and the elements that go into that. How do you convey that to a consumer?
And that's been really tough. And we've through our studies, we have a group of our consumers, a group of our customers who are very passionate about that aspect of it. I would say the other 30% of that customer base is really just after our shape and style that we're doing differently. Mm-hmm. And the materials are kind of the cool after effect and afterthought of it. But it is very hard to market and it can, like you said, convey that message of exactly what we're doing differently without writing a paragraph with every Instagram post.
It's a thing we talk about it here in our business, like trying to simplify the message, because okay, we can give you a 42 point iteration of why our company is different from a competitor.
Certainly.
Or why we do things differently, and it's like snooze alert at a point because it's like, yeah, but how fast can you get here, and how much is it going to cost?
Exactly.
But there are, like you said, there's a certain percentage of consumers that go, hey, that actually is really important to me.
Yes.
So we need to be able to communicate that. It's an interesting thing of, in all business marketing, of understanding how to communicate your story in a simplified manner, but to communicate what's important from the business and to the consumer.
Certainly, and that's something we're working on, and you'll even see us roll out this year. We're doing a video program with our acetate manufacturer over in Italy, who's making our cotton stuff to really show how that's made, because that material is still a very, I guess, elusive. People don't understand exactly what it is and why it is, and how important it is that we're using that material, and how hard it is to work with.
So your Johnny Fly brand, I mean, even if you look at the overall image or the overall branding of it, it's very eyewear focused, even though you have a lot of other elements.
Certainly.
There's other things, and so as you mentioned, you kind of started with some T-shirts, and then you had wooden phone cases, and then you moved into the eyewear. You've added other product lines as well. What drove that? What was the thought process behind that? And then, so let's ask that question first, and then we'll move into a couple other questions.
Yep. I guess quick answer. I'm a creature of, if I dreamed it last night, I want to make it tomorrow, and I did that for a very long time. If I had an idea, I made it, put it on our website, even if it were one or two pieces. I guess you call it the shotgun approach. And that's what everybody always said. I was very shotgun. Like, if I had an idea, I threw it all out there, and then whatever stuck or whatever hit the target, I ran with, which was eyewear ultimately. But that being said, I was doing a lot of stuff, and I was spending a lot of energy and time on these product avenues that weren't necessarily, returning.
Sure.
And I was passionate about it, but I was most passionate about eyewear. And I had a very sharp mentor who said, don't do a whole bunch of stuff good. Do one thing great.
Yeah.
And then I sat back and looked, and I said, eyewear is what I care about, but I'm wasting a ton of time lasering phone cases over here.
Yeah.
That nobody, they're gonna change when the next phone changes.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that special. So we basically, and I have closets of prototypes from boots and shoes and hats, and I literally had prototyped everything and started working on half-ended projects. So. Then leather came along. I had made some leather prototypes. I made a duffel bag and a messenger. But about that time was when I decided to cut all projects and focus eyewear.
Gotcha.
So I cut leather too. Never made it. And so I carried that prototype for about a year and a half. And people kept trying to buy it off my shoulder everywhere.
Yeah.
So I was at an optics fair in New York, and I had a guy offer me $500 to take my messenger bag off my shoulder. And I said, give me a couple months. Let me see. Let me see what we can do. So we came home.
1,000, and we'll make it a deal.
And kind of like eyewear did, we just test things. Like, all right, I'm going to make 60 bags. I had to beg my manufacturer, who does this sustainably and ethically and all that great stuff. I was like, I know you need a minimum, but just give me 60 bags. And if it works, I'm going to order 600 from you.
Sure.
I was like, just give me a shot. So we made 60 bags for the holidays. We launched them the week before Black Friday. They were gone 2 weeks before Christmas. Yeah. And leather's never turned back. We're over 20,000 bags now. So
again, going back to that, I was very familiar with the Johnny Fly brand, just through probably social media. I'd seen some stuff on television, and then I was in, if I remember correctly, because I had always associated it with just eyewear.
Yeah.
And I, at that point in time, was wearing prescription glasses, so I had to have prescription, which you didn't do at that time. Yep. I know you're doing that now. But I was in, I think it was the 7th Street Station Market or whatever, walking around there one day, and there was one little shop in there, and there were some leather bags that caught my attention. I walked over there and looked at it, and I was like, hey, that's Johnny Fly. And so I started doing some research on it, and I had eyeballed that particular bag for probably 12 months. And I finally walked in the store and purchased one. I think it was December of either 2016 or December of 2017. But it's that bag that I carry
looks good
every single day. It's been all over the world with me. And since then, I've bought another duffel bag, which is massively, insanely large.
the Traveler, that thing's a monster.
But it needs wheels on it. But anyway, but it's a really interesting, solid product, and it's one of the things. I'd carried a different bag for probably about 5 years, and it just was wearing out. And this is one that I'm very particular in the way that a product is set up, and this is one that I'm thinking, okay, this is going to last me a long, long time. So anyway, it's a really cool thing to be able to do that. But it was all of that, and this is the next step that I wanted to walk into. Is I had been aware of your brand for a long time online, and I don't know if I would not have seen that physical bag hanging on that wall, and then if I would not have walked into your retail store, I don't know that I would have ever purchased one. I don't know that I would, me personally. And I know that there's a large consumer base like that. And so the next thing is, why in the world you had this massive success online through social media, selling everything online? Why start a retail location? And I know I just answered part of that question, but you launched a retail location in what year?
2017 of the permanent location. Yeah.
Permanent location. All right. So talk us through that and why that was a big decision for you and why it was important.
Well, kind of like everything, which I've mentioned before in design and everything else, I do everything because I think this is how I am. Because I am a consumer. I'm a big consumer. I love consuming product.
Sure.
So I say, I would have a hard time buying my sunglasses online if I weren't me, or knew what they were. And same with the leather, right? I'm a very touch and feel person. I want to see it. Very early on, I always dreamed of a retail store, and whether I thought we'd get to that step, I never knew. But the same people who told me, hey, focus and be one, narrow things down, also said, why the heck are you going to go brick and mortar when, that was absolutely the worst idea. The entire world's trying to get out of brick and mortar and go online and be successful. You're successful online. Why the heck are you going to go brick and mortar? But basically, to prove that point, I opened a 30-day store in Birkdale in 2016.
Gotcha.
And I said, hey, let's just see what happens. We're going to close it after 30 days, a pop-up, a permanent pop-up. And then we closed it 30 days down. People started beating my doors down at my warehouse. And I was in the back of a business park, hard to find. You literally had to really want to get there. So we had to build a little showroom up front, and then customers started getting mad because we weren't there on this day or that day.
Hours, yeah.
Well, we're at a trade show in Vegas, or we're, I'm traveling somewhere else and nobody's there. I'm like, well, we don't really have hours because it's an office.
Yeah.
So then I was like, all right, we got to figure this out. So that led to me hunting, the very long and hard hunt of where the heck can we put this thing, where, I think in a way, like, yes, we want to be in a location, but I really prefer being a destination over a location. Instead of just getting random, walkthroughs and things like that, our customer base, I felt would drive to us over time. But Noda was the perfect opportunity. That's where I hang out. Yeah. That's my spot. That's where I live. And this ugly corner spot showed up at the corner of Neighborhood Theater, and it was old and crusty and everything else. It was rough. And I said, and we didn't have, it was going to take every bit of extra budget because we had enough cash flow to buy more product to keep up sales. As growth's tough and painful. So this project was even more painful. But we put all the eggs in that basket. Said, let's go for it. I think this is going to be valuable. Yeah. And we moved in and opened July of 2017, and haven't looked back. And that store has been beautiful, amazing. It really changed the brand, and it took what Charlotte was like number 8 or 9 on our U.S. markets for Johnny Fly.
Gotcha.
To where Charlotte is 50% of our U.S. market, which naturally, because there's a store here, but it is crazy just how much. Even our online business is almost like 20% North Carolina based, which we're in fashion. That's not a norm.
Yeah. No, that's exciting. So that was it was a big risk, but you got a big turn of it. I mean, it was very beneficial. So one of the questions that I really like to ask on this side of it is, where are you going from here? You've essentially created a fashion brand now.
Yep.
I mean, is that the overall look for Johnny Fly? It's just more and more of the kind of fashion apparel type. What
Certainly,
are we looking at?
You know, nothing's ever like. I'm glad that I have put deadlines on myself because nothing's ever good enough. If I didn't have deadlines, I'd still be working on that first pair of sunglasses because they still wouldn't be good enough, and I'd still be in my guest room somewhere.
Yeah.
But so that being said, I think there's still a lot of room to improve. This last round and line of Johnny Fly of the eyewear is so far beyond anything I could have ever dreamed of, quality wise and sustainability wise and durability wise. Like I'm getting close to where things I hadn't dreamed of before.
Yeah.
And same with the leather. I mean, the leather is not as consumable as eyewear, and I guess that's probably why we don't promote it the same way. But leather's more like buying a car because you're going to be in it for a few years. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Eyewear's changes with style and fashion and scene, and and even in prescription insurance re-ups every year. You change your frame, like that's a little bit different, and that's why even though the price points a lot of times are very similar, that's a much more thought out product than a piece of eyewear. So
exactly.
But that being, there's kind of three parts to the brand. There's the products within the brand, and then the brick and mortar. So I think all three aspects have things to do this year. So I think there's product development that is happening over the next couple of years. That's going to change the way leather is, and we're going to add more accessories and some more things on that side. Eyewear, we've really grown in the prescription realm and the ophthalmic realm. So we're designing a lot of frames for prescription ophthalmic that are going to change. And brick and mortar, hey, I think there's time for more stores. So
what's some of the lessons that you've learned? Maybe one simple lesson that you learned when you launched the retail store that maybe if somebody else is out there in a very similar process as you, maybe it's not the fashion side of it, but just something, hey, I'm getting ready to launch a retail. What is something that you stumbled across, something that you went through that you said, hey, if I knew now what I knew, knew then what I know now, what would I do different? Less
is more. And if something's not working, it's not because it's not good. It's just because it needs time. When things didn't work, I would pile in more money, more time, more products. Maybe people don't think I'm big enough or I'm not doing this right. Some things take time to marinate and become something. Don't give up quickly. Because a lot of people will either give up or pour more money. Like, they just let it marinate and give it time. If you truly believe in it and if it's something that belongs.
Stay consistent with it. What that's awesome. So a couple of takeaways that I'm pulling from today is that let it marinate, take time. A couple of other things that you mentioned were narrow your focus, essentially. There's always this pull to try to do 1,000 different things, but maybe you just need to do 5 or 6 of them really, really well. Focus in on that and do that thing right. What are some other things that you would say from the overall time that you've been operating your own business and kind of learning through that you would one simple piece of advice that you would give to anybody out there that may be watching or listening?
I guess when the means are available to delegate your time, do what you do best. Don't be afraid to spend a little bit of money to put something onto someone else who does that best, or a software that does that best. Yeah. I know I've wasted years of my life in spreadsheets where I needed to just pay $50 a month to one software that would have done it all for me. Yeah. And I learned that the hard way. Or even white box photography. I'm not great at it, but I had to do it, and it took me days. $35 an image, $20 an image, whatever it may cost. Yeah. I'm now designing and doing what makes the company money and what makes me happy and more enjoyable and where my skill set is.
If you talk to any type of a business owner or leader, and once you get down to the meat of it, that's where the ones that are overly successful go is. And I don't want to take a whole lot of time to talk about it, but we have been through that similar process in this organization where you're trying to do everything, and at a point you have to. Yep. You have to design the website, you have to do all of the photos and pictures and do all the presentations and all that stuff. But when you can, the moment that you can find other people that can do it, and you said it best, do it better than you.
Certainly.
So you can focus your time on the things that you're really good at. And when you're in a small business, when you're a solopreneur or whatever, you have to do all those things.
Yep.
But you may not be good at all of them. And there comes a point, I think, in every business where you have to make the mental decision of, I'm going to break that mold and start to trust other people and allow them to do it better, or I'm going to hold on to it myself.
Yep.
And the ones that hold on to it themselves are the ones that become stagnant and put themselves in a smaller box, and it will not allow you to scale.
Oh yeah.
And so I think you've been a proven testament to that, and it's really, really cool. Again, this is the first time that we've ever really kind of met and chatted, and it's really been exciting to kind of learn more about your story. And I wish you much success with the brand. It's super awesome to see, and especially since it's local here to our area. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it.
Again, one of our goals here with this podcast is to share valuable tactical content for all of our listeners, something that they can literally grab a hold of and take with them. So if this is your first time listening or watching, we ask you to subscribe. We do a brand new episode every Tuesday, 9 a.m. on Facebook Live, and then it's posted shortly thereafter on all of the podcast networks, iTunes, Anchor, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you want to listen to your podcast, they're there. Season 1 with 20 episodes is available for you now, if you want to go check that out. And we've got more to come. Next week on the podcast, we're going to have a special guest, Chris Brown. He is part of the Dave Ramsey personalities. He is a former campus pastor for Elevation Church and doing a lot of really neat things. And he's going to be a guest next week on the podcast. So look forward to meeting him and discussing some things with him. But until then, we definitely invite you to subscribe. If this was beneficial to you, like and share it. And we will see you next week right here on the Coffee Break Podcast. To learn more about the topics discussed today and to connect with us online to hear all of the episodes available, visit Loc-Doc.net/podcast.
We got so much to say. We got a podcast to make. We're sipping on lattes, and it's time for a coffee break. It's time for a coffee break.
The Coffee Break Podcast is brought to you by Loc-Doc Security. We'd love to connect with you online on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Just search LOCDOCINC.